Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for another Ask Me Anything with Zen Garcia. This is your host, Joy Garcia, and today is our 45th episode. How are you tonight, Zen?
Good. Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. I'm super excited to be here and to be able to dig into these questions. So I'll go ahead and open us up in prayer, because I know that a lot of people have a lot of questions that they want to get to. So, Father, we thank you so much for bringing us here together once again, for allowing us to live another week and another couple weeks. And we just thank you so much for the gift of life. And we thank you so much for the opportunity to serve you in whatever capacity that we can and that you'll allow us to. We thank you once again for the wisdom that you've given to Zen to research all of these wonderful mysteries, Father, that you give us the tools to be able to search out. We thank you so much for your love and the curiosity that you put into the hearts of our listeners that bring in such wonderful questions. And we ask that we would have a really wonderful fellowship tonight. We thank you so much for your love and salvation through you. In Yahushua's name we pray, amen.
Amen.
All right, first question for tonight is from Jeff. And he asks, I was wondering if you have ever sat down and made a timeline of characters and events that you have researched and written about. You have mentioned other civilizations that existed, American Indians, North and South, Polynesians, Celts, etc., angels, and mythological beings that existed. Where on the timeline do they fall? A timeline with references from all the different books and writings that exist would be great. Does such a timeline exist?
No. And yeah, that would be a wonderful thing for somebody to create. But no, I don't have the talent to do something like that. I mean, yeah, I know when certain things have happened, but I've never really sat down to take the time to plot it all out like that. I know Rob's real good with that kind of thing, and he has done that kind of thing for the Second World Age, but no, I haven't done anything or made anything available like that.
Alrighty, thank you. Next question is from Stephen. I would like to know if Satan is Enki, Enlil, Azazel, or someone else altogether. What is Shemayaza's historical name?
Shemyaza means my name is Aza. And so, in my opinion, as the apocalypse of Abraham brings forth that the serpent in the garden, not only called Azazel, but also Samael is the name that comes forth for the angel of death. He also means the viper or the poison of God. And it is referenced in Genesis in chapter 3, verse 6, where it speaks about the serpent was more subtle than all the other creatures of the field. That in the Targum it says that the serpent, or the Samael, the angel of death, was more subtle to evil than all the other creatures of the field. And so it actually names the serpent as Samael. But yes, Enki, in my opinion, is the Sumerian equivalent to this particular entity, this particular deity, and that he's also, in my opinion, connected to what we see in the Greek and the Roman mythology as Poseidon or Neptune, and that his brother Enlil, or the character of Enlil, is said to be that of Zeus. And yeah, that's my opinion. And then the Egyptian equivalent for Enki would be the god Ptah, Ptah, and so, but there's different names, different embodiments, but essentially, Satan, even Satan is a title. It means the adversary, and I also believe that what we see in the Latin Vulgate in Isaiah chapter 14, Hallel, Lucifer, the Shining One, same particular entity. And you can find in the book, The Traditions of the Jews, that was put out in the 1700s, that all of these names are said to be the same entity as well. Azazel, Samael, Satan, Lucifer, all the same particular character. The Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 28, and Ezekiel 31. The tree that was the foremost and most beautiful, most vain, and that had everything at one time under its wings, or under its limbs of protection. And but yeah, you can find and look to those particular chapters for more information on this particular character.
Thank you. Next question is from Stephen. I was reading the writings of Abraham, and in the writings, Noah marries Noamah as his second wife, and she was of the seed line of Cain. However, in the book of Jasher, she is the only wife mentioned. Also, if Ham was the fruit of that union, and Ham's wife was of Cain's seed, why would Ham need to rape his mother to have a Canaanite child?
Good question. And the Nama that is mentioned in Jasher chapter 5 is different than the Nama that is mentioned in the writings of Abraham. Specifically in Jasher chapter 5, you will read that this particular Nama that birthed both Shem and Japheth, and it says that these two children went in the ways of their fathers. They were of the pure seed line. They were of the righteous bloodline. And it says that this Nama was the daughter of Enoch. And so completely, even though, yes, they have the same names, and we do see that repeated in the bloodlines, that even Enoch, Lamech, and Methuselah, that there's a repeat, and I think that Satan does that in order to cause confusion. But even Nama, and she is in the line of Cain, and in the writings of Abraham, this Nama is the sister of Tubal-Cain and the daughter of Lamech. Both of them still 7 generations from what would be Adam or Cain, and so near the same age, but different Namas. And as far as it's not that Ham had to, rape his mother, Nama, which would be the second Nama, who was the sister of Tubal-Cain. And Noah was instructed to take her as wife in order to perpetuate the serpent seed through the flood. And it wasn't that he had to do that in order to bring forth Canaan. He did that because he's perverse, and he acted in an abominable manner. And it was in that abomination and that act of abomination that the continuation of the seed line of Cain finds continuance through the flood and through what is the child Canaan. And this is why we see that Noah curses Canaan, because he is the child of this fornication, in the same manner that Cain was also born of adultery. And so, it's not that these things had to be done, but because they were done, and this particular wicked bloodline is perpetuated through such action. And so that's just what happened. And so it's not that, Ham had to do that in order to perpetuate the bloodline, but because he did. Canaan, because his mother, Nama, from the line of Cain, was, again, a serpent seed herself. And then Ham being half serpent seed himself, him copulating with his mother, that would carry on predominantly that particular bloodline through Canaan. And so that's how that, the serpent seed was continued. And we see this in Matthew 13, where Christ says, let both grow together until the time of the end. And so there would be a continuation of this bloodline, and that it would be perpetuated just as the giants were perpetuated through the flood and after, found before and after, as it says in Genesis 6 as well. And so that's what happened. And if you want to know more and read about the particulars of this, you can find it in chapter 19 of my 12th book, The Great Contest 2, Enmity Between the Seed Lines, How the Seed of Cain Survived the Flood. And so, yeah.
Thank you. Next question is from Mo. If God knows the end from the beginning, then how can we have free will? If from the beginning he already knew what decisions we would make, and that most people he created would reject him, even with Christ as a source of redemption, does that mean that God created most people knowing they would perish in hell forever? Why didn't he just create the people he knew would obey him, rather than creating people who would eventually suffer in hell?
Well, God isn't going to create robots. And the free will component is because he loves us and he wants to give all of us choice to decide for ourselves. And he wants us to choose out of love to honor him as God. And just because a lot reject him, that's not on him, that's on us. We have a responsibility in playing a part of all that as well. And it's because of free will that everything's not just automated. And it would be cruel and callous for him to just randomly assign, these people are going to be saved and these are going to be condemned. That would be unjust and cruel, in my opinion. And that would not show as far as the sovereignty of a loving, compassionate, and kind God. God that chooses to give us the option and the choice to, if we want to reject him, and if we want to come back to him, like the prodigal child. And so that, in my opinion, shows more with regard to loving us, because he says even love your enemies, and teaches us that same thing, that whole principle. And so, again, the responsibility is on us. And if God wanted to just create everything of good, we would never know the blessings of the bounty and the joy and the pleasure and the just the as far as paradise and the immortal being that we had and Adam and Eve shared and enjoyed before their fall from grace. But it is through their fall from grace and our now learning through the knowledge of good and evil, the full spectrum of pain and pleasure, light and darkness, that we can understand what good is and also what evil is. And without the experience of this duality, we wouldn't know how to relish and to, to give and be grateful for one over the other, in my opinion.
Thank you. Follow-up question also from Mo. Where did evilness come from? Is God both pure evil and goodness? Because if there was only pure goodness in heaven before Satan fell, where did he learn evilness from?
Again, that comes from free will. And that was his choice to revolt against, to reject God, and to choose a different path. And that, again, the knowledge of good and evil is now within all of us, coming into flesh embodiment, incarnating into flesh form. But with regard to is God evil? No, God is not at all evil and has no aspect and nothing within him that is evil. Even the passage in Isaiah that says, I create light and darkness, he says that I create punishment for evil in that particular passage. And you can find that in the Targum version of Isaiah, which we'll be putting out a Targum of Isaiah hopefully very soon. But that, again, if you read that particular chapter, if you know what I'm talking about, I believe it's in Isaiah 45. But that's something that, again, that people don't know. And a lot of people that are against Christianity and want to blame God for the establishment and the perpetuation of evil, they look to that particular verse. But again, it is mistranslated. And the responsibility of evil lies with the fallen angels and their revolt, their rejection, and the war in heaven that began, that separated the forces of light and darkness into two divisions. And it was their fall from grace that even created what is the duality of this world, and that the earth is the meeting place for spirit and matter, and that Sheol represents the left-hand path, or the broad way of destruction, and the right-hand path, which is connected to the seed of the woman, the seed of promise, and Christ, that is the right-hand path and the narrow way. And so the differences in these particular ways of being is that one represents the kingship and how the kings expected the people to serve them. And the other is the path of the shepherd, the path of the priest, which Christ, as a foot washer, he bent the knee and he showed to us how the shepherd would die even for his sheep, and that we are to serve each other and one another in love. And that's the way of God and Christ and the priesthood, and being foot washers unto each other. They asked, who amongst us is greatest? And that's when he showed them that, the person that would die for his friend, that would die for another, as Christ did for us, that is who is greatest.
Thank you. Next question is from Cyrus. I would like to ask Mr. Garcia if he can provide the complete lecture video, as he does with all his lectures in YouTube, about the seventh seal, 7 trumpets, the 7 angels, above all, where do we stand today based on what is shaping our world and events taking place?
Yeah, I can do that at some point. I'll remember to do a show that is specific to that, and yeah, I'll lay it out in timeline. But yeah, it'll be sometime in the future.
Great. Next question is from Nicole. I would love to hear your opinion on having multiple wives and concubines in the Bible. Why did God allow this? Jesus said that whosoever looks at another woman in lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. How can a man take many wives and have sexual intercourse with concubines and handmaidens without lusting and being sexually immoral?
That's a great question. And really, I don't know the fullness of that answer or why it was that, initially, with regard to Abraham and, the early patriarchs, that perhaps it had something to do with just growing the populations and creating the different, what would become peoples and tribes. But I can't, with certainty say or declare a reason, because in my opinion, there's no scriptural basis that we can look to and pull up in specific and say, well, this is why God said and told them to do that. I do think that at times, and perhaps even with, with the regard to the story of Abraham, how because Sarah did not believe that she was ever going to have children, that she gave to her husband Hagar, who was her handmaiden, and wanted to raise up children through her because she was unable to do so. And she did not listen to it or adhere to the promise of God to Abraham that he's going to multiply his seed like the stars in heaven. And because she thought she was too old and her womb dried up and that she was not going to be able to bring forth children, she went the other way and created and did of her own accord and gave to Abraham to father children through Hagar. But that was not something that God had told her to do, even though, of course, yes, we know that he sees the end from the beginning and the Ishmaelites coming forth, that we would see what would be the enmity and the continuation of the bloodline war, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, that this would continue through Ishmael and Isaac, as well as Jacob and Esau, two nations being in the womb of Rebekah. And so, in similarity, that we see this particular bloodline, this war, continuing all throughout the scriptures. And so, God makes provision, but, again, with regard to why the early patriarchs took multiple wives and were allowed to do so, I'm not sure, because again, if you go back to the very beginning, to the garden, it tells us clearly that Adam was to take, coming together with Eve, that they would be one flesh, and that would create a union. And that even when Eve was taken out of the side of Adam as a rib, there were not multiple wives there. Adam was created one wife to be his helpmate, and they were together to be a couple, and through holy matrimony they would be one flesh. And so I don't know where this particular action, well, I do actually know that it was the line of Cain, that Lamech took multiple wives, and that Zillah and Adar, and that the children of Cain, it says in the scriptures, in I believe it's the first book of Adam and Eve or somewhere, or one of those texts, that they kept a wife to bear children and another that they kept only for pleasure. And that this particular, they practiced not only, as far as infanticide, they knew and used herbs to keep this other wife from having children and bearing children and getting pregnant. And that, even in the book of Enoch, it tells us that the angels taught their wives how to abort children and to keep from being and getting pregnant. And so this kind of behavior began with the children of Cain, and how it bled over and was, perpetuated by the children of Adam as well. I don't know that God ever affirmed that that was okay, or ever said anywhere to anyone that, that was fine among him. Yes, when a particular wife passed away, then they were, and it was okay for them to take another wife. But, again, with regard to the polygamy, I don't see a scriptural basis actually for that.
Thank you. Next question is from Nicole. What do you believe was God's reason to put our souls into flesh? If we pre-existed without flesh bodies, and we will return back to God without our flesh when we die, what is the purpose of life in this form?
It's to experience good and evil. And the whole theme of the fall of humanity is that in the day you eat and touch thereof, you shall die. And so we came under the authority of death. And the reason they were tempted to do so was to know and to be like God and to be like the angels of God, knowing good and evil. And so that is why we are here, learning through the experience of good and evil, because it is in the flesh that we have election and choice to choose God in a manner that we can be saved and redeemed through him. And so that's the whole reason for the real purpose of coming into the flesh and going through the embodiment of flesh, is to learn that God came into the flesh in order to save us and to redeem us. And that dying as the Passover lamb, he gave us a forgiveness of sins that even allows the children of Cain to be saved and to be redeemed, and that the Gentiles were grafted in onto the olive tree, and that everybody, no matter the election, no matter if they're born a children of the woman or the serpent, that we can be redeemed through Christ. And so that's the message of the gospel, and that's the promise of the cross.
Thank you. Next question is from Nicole. In a previous show with Rob Skiba, I've heard him mentioning a theory that this new world order that the world is heading to right now with the arrival of the Antichrist is actually a setup by the devil, making believers think that this is the biblical Antichrist kingdom before Christ returns, when in fact, the devil himself will overthrow his first false new world order masquerading as Christ, which is the strong delusion, and then putting the real new world order in place that the Bible speaks of, making everyone believe that he is God, returned for the second coming. What are your thoughts on this?
What better deception than to do exactly that? And, why wouldn't the devil try to bring forth a strong delusion where he fulfills exactly in his own manner what the scriptures reveal to us as far as the coming first of the Antichrist, and then the follow-up that the true Christ comes. And I think this is why we see also in the scriptures, in like the revelation of St. John the Theologian, that the purpose of Enoch and Elijah coming is to convict the Antichrist and to make sure that the saints know without a doubt that there is going to be a false Christ, and that this particular individual, performing signs and wonders and calling down fire from heaven, and, having these kind of capacities, that many in the world, even the most elect, should it be possible that they could be deceived. And so, yeah, I think that Satan is going to go all out to bring forth several, what John says, that there are several antichrists, and that at some point coming onto the scene will be, I believe, some kind of ancient alien extraterrestrial deity, and that a lot of people will, because they believe in the Sumerian mythologies and the whole thing of, the ever expanding universe, and that there's multiple suns and all these galaxies, and that there are people from out there, and that these particular, a long time ago, one of these races, the Anunnaki, seeded humanity here on the earth, and they're coming to return at the end of days to save us from ourselves. That these kind of things will be what will play out to be the real strong delusion. And that, again, Christ, in my opinion, won't return until the day of the rapture, when the church is pulled out, and then the wrath of God is poured out on the wicked and those that rejected him and those that are excluded from the books of life, and that will have the wrath of God come forth and pour it out on them, in my opinion.
Thank you. Next question is from Kay. From the Vestures of Light and Rod of Wonder, page 110, and from the Writings of Abraham, 18:3, Cain taught Nimrod because Cain had not perished in the flood. Can you elaborate on this? I hadn't heard this before.
Yes, that's what it says. But, again, with regard to the scriptures and anything that contradicts what we see written in the Bible, in my opinion, it takes out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses is the truth established. And even though it does say that in the writings of Abraham, I don't see it said anywhere else, only in the Sumerian mythology. They say that Cain was saved and that he was, moved to and placed in South America, and that his children were able to somehow survive, and that the people in South America, that the reason they don't grow facial hair is that the mark of Cain was that he was unable to grow facial hair, and that's according to the Sumerian mythology. But again, as far as biblical scriptures, I don't see anywhere else where that could be mentioned. Not saying that, again, that it's not possible, but I don't find a scriptural basis for it. It is an interesting something to consider, especially in regard to what the Sumerian mythos accounts with regard to Cain having survived the flood and also being moved away in some manner so that his children could survive. But with regard to the Bible, it says that all but 8, and those were on the ark, survived. But again, with regard to the giants, we know that even though Og is said to be the last remnant giant to be, to have lived before the flood and to have survived through it, Sihon, his brother, also was an antediluvian titan, and that he also had in some manner survived the flood. And he came forth with the Amalekites to fight against Moshe and Joshua when they were going into the land of promise. And so the Bible doesn't mention Sihon having survived. It does speak about how Og in the Targum in Genesis chapter 15, it says that Og had rode upon the ark, and that Noah had fed him, and that's how he was able to survive. But obviously Sihon survived somehow, but again, this isn't mentioned scripturally. So, it's all speculation as to how that occurred, but it did occur in some manner. And so, just things to consider. But, again, the whole biblical premise and principle that I use in establishing truth is to have 2 or 3 witnesses to affirm and be confirming witness to what one of the other stories or one of the other accounts actually says. And so, and anything else that, I don't have multiple witnesses for, I keep that information as interesting insight, but affirming it as foundational truth. That's where I'm careful.
Next question is from Jim. Have you considered that the Nephilim might have not physically mated with the human woman to make giants, similar to the way Mary was a virgin and pregnant?
No. And the reason I know that they physically copulated with the daughters of Cain is because, again, I have multiple confirming witnesses for this having been done. And in fact, last night, Rob and I did a show on Genesis 6 and revisiting that particular perspective and how it was that the angels, without a doubt, the sons of God, mating with the daughters of Cain, that they were the ones that brought forth this hybrid race. And that, we were refuting the Sethite theory that if it was just the children of Seth marrying the daughters of Cain and these two human people coming together, how do you get a race of giants out of that? It doesn't make sense. And so, without a doubt, the sons of God, the angels, and as I read in the very last portion of the show last night, they were given bodies of flesh, which made the compatibility possible. And so one has to know the fullness of the story and how it is that these angels were placed into male bodies and given what it says in the scriptures as privy members, and that with privy members they were able to then copulate with the daughters of Cain, and they brought forth this race of giants. And so when you understand the fullness of the story, it's undoubtable that the children of God, the sons of God, the angels of heaven, were responsible for that interaction.
Thank you. Next question is from Jim. The demons were thrown into hell for about 2,000 years or so many generations. What scripture was that? What about year do you think they might have been released? Do you talk about any of these issues in a past YouTube video that I can watch for the answers?
You can listen to a series that I did on the 2 incursions of the angels, where I do talk about these kind of things. But with regard to the angels that were bound, and especially the Watchers, for creating this race of giants, it says that they would be put into the earth for 70 generations. And how that plays out numerically, we do not exactly know. But it is my opinion that everything with regard to the fulfillment of prophecy, everything hinges upon what is the blooming of the fig tree. And without a doubt, we are the generation that saw the blooming of the fig tree occur. Well, not us specifically, because I wasn't alive in 1948, but this generation, there were some that are of this generation which were. And a generation is said to be in Psalms 90, verse 10, 78 or 80 years in strength. And so, in my opinion, the generation, which is us, that comes up after the blooming of the fig tree, which was the recreation of the house of Israel, the nation state of Israel in 1948, May 14th, 1948, that 80 years from that point would be to 2028. And so if scripture is correct as I interpret it, and if we are in, the age of accountability, where being the blooming of the fig tree occurred 70 years or 71 years now ago, in my opinion, we are close to what would be the accomplishment and the fulfillment and the coming reign and as far as coming on the scenes of the Antichrist. And then 3.5 years into the tribulation of what would be the appearance of Enoch and Elijah. And so when you see Enoch and Elijah and the Antichrist all on the scene, know then, as it says in the scriptures, look up because your redemption is nigh.
Thank you. Next question is from Courtney. Can a flat earth also be a hollow earth?
Absolutely. And yes, this is exactly the way that I describe it and share the testimony of it in my 19th book, Paradise, the Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation. That is the third book of our Flat Earth and Biblical Cosmology trilogy. The Flat Earth as key to decrypt the Book of Enoch, the Firmament vaulted dome of the earth, and then Paradise, Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation. And I do explain in great detail how at the North Pole, where you have what Lucifer describes as the Mount of the Congregation, and in the sides of the north, that there is this mountain there, the Mount Zion or Mount Olympus, Mount Meru, whatever you want to call it, the Rupus Negra, it is also called the Black Rock, that this particular mountain is encompassed by a whirlpool, the abysmal chasm, and that this particular whirlpool drains the oceans of the world into the interior of the earth. And then every 6 hours it reverses and will, instead of drinking the waters of the earth, begin to spit them out in geyser. And that this particular cycle is what creates the rhythm and the breath of life of the earth, and also the high and the low tides. And so, yes, if you want to know more about the hollow earth, it's found in that particular book, and I elaborate upon it in very great detail.
Thank you. Next question. Actually, the last question of the 14 emailed in questions, and then we'll move on to live questions. Amazing. But the last question is from Nicole. Zen, do you believe that a married couple is allowed by God to decide to not have any more children or no children at all?
Yeah, I think that, again, choice comes into a decision. And if you feel that in responsibility that you're not able to care for, or that you're simply too old to, bear children and to have the energy to raise them, well then, yeah, again, that's your choice. And there are protections that people can use, or, even different, I guess, implements that you can get help with regard to birth control, or, even condoms, that if you don't want to bear children, well, there are ways that you can keep yourself from doing so. I know that a lot of Catholics believe that they should never use any kind of birth control, and that they should have as many children as God will allow them to do so. But, if you don't want to have 10 kids over the course of 20 years or whatever, either you have to not be sexually active, or you have to use some form of birth control. Otherwise, you're not going to control how many kids you have. And there are a lot of families, in my opinion, that do and are struggling from having numerous kids and not being able to afford them. But, that's what the Catholic Church teaches, and that's the belief system that they perpetuate. And it is one of the largest religions on the earth, 15 billion followers or thereabouts. And so, You know, and so I think that question was probably from somebody that is familiar with what I'm talking about.
Thank you. First live question from the chat tonight is from Cam Thomason. Hey Zen, I was wondering if any of your books talk about the Tartarian Empire and the mud floods, or if you know of any books that talk about that. Thank you and love your work.
Thank you. And yes, I do cover this in both the ancient prophecies of Christ, where I expound upon the 5,500-year prophecy of the coming of Christ and how the timeline in the Septuagint is different than what we have been taught. And so, and it's not anything, I mean, it's not like a whole chapter. I do speak about it and cover it, but, you know, I have not written a whole book on it or covered it in great detail. And really, I don't know anybody that has. Actually, Martin Ledecky, I believe he has written a book that is specific to the mud floods. And so that's the person that I would go to for if you're very interested in this particular topic and want to know more. But otherwise, I'm not familiar with anybody that has done a book on this particular topic and packed in a lot of information. I know Martin, he's definitely an authority on this subject, and so he's the one I would look to for, you know, greater clarity on this.
Thank you. Next question is from Tommy Enikin. How many times the earth was destroyed? How many times destroyed?
It says in the Midrash that it was destroyed numerous times. And also in the, you know, the Plato's dialogues, that he also describes, you know, and even the Greek believe that the earth was destroyed many times. As far as biblically, I know without a doubt that the Bible affirms that the earth was destroyed in Genesis 1:2 with the war in heaven and with the revolt of the angels against the Most High God, and that what we see in Genesis 1:3 and onwards, or actually about Genesis 1:11 and onwards, is that the earth is being recreated and reestablished in what is the second world age, and that 2 Peter chapter 3 goes into great elaboration on that. And so, but this book that I'm writing now is specific to it, and I do have to, you know, let everybody know that I had a setback with regard to releasing this book, and I know everybody's excited to get it, but I lost about a month's work, and that was because of the external hard drive where I was saving this particular edition. Something happened to it, it went out, and I'm not able to gain access to that information anymore. I am still exploring ways to maybe retrieve and to regather that information, but because of this, I'm going to have to go back and re-add some information if I'm not able to get what is the updated copy off of this drive. And so I will let people know soon. It will probably be at least a week to 10 days that I can recreate that information and add all that I wanted to, that I had additionally added to the text before, you know, what was the last upload of this particular manuscript. And so, and just pray for me that I'm able to get this information off of this hard drive and that I can make it available in the way that it already was without having to recreate all of that. And so, and then if if at all possible, I'm exploring options. Within a couple days, I'll know if I'm going to be able to retrieve this data or not. And if not, then I'll have to recreate it, and that will set me back at least a week to 10 days, maybe even 2 weeks, which still is not a very long time for y'all, but I know people are excited to get this book.
Thank you. Next question is from Juliet Mary. Is there spiritual kingdoms in the second heaven, demonic or angelic host from Jesus?
Read that again.
Sure. Is there spiritual kingdoms in the second heaven, demonic or angel hosts from Jesus?
Yes, with regard to the first and the second heavens, which actually are the first through the seven heavens, that all of these heavens are under what is the division of the firmament, dividing the waters above from the waters below. That and this is also called the third heaven. That's where the Most High dwells. That's where paradise is located. But in the book of Enoch and the ascension of Isaiah, the apocalypse of Peter, and other places, there's a division of seven heavens. And up to the sixth heaven, you will see that there are principalities and powers and angels on both the left and the right representing good and evil, the right being the angels of God, the left being the angels of the devil. And that once you pass the sixth heaven, that there are no more thrones or principalities on the left side. That in the seventh heaven and onward up to what is the 10th heaven, called Erebath in the second book of Enoch, that there's only the angels of the Most High God. And so the angels or the principalities, the powers of the air, those that are the forces of legion, they do not exist above the sixth heaven. And you can find this also confirmed in the book of the secrets of Enoch, where Enoch is taken up through the seven heavens and then brought before the presence of the Word. And that Christ then tells him how, he established and ordered the creation. But we see also in the descent of Christ from the throne of the Father down through the seven heavens, that hiding himself and taking on in appearance the angels of the powers of the air, in coming into flesh embodiment and being born of Mary, that Isaiah, as he's shown the descent of Christ through the seven heavens, he sees that there are angels on both the left and the right. And then once he gets to the sixth heaven, that there is the appearance of legion and the angels of Satan and the devil fighting amongst themselves, and that passwords are kept to go through the different heavens and all of that. And so people can look to those particular texts, the ascension of Isaiah, the book of the secrets of Enoch, and also in my book on the firmament, vaulted dome of the earth, I go into great detail on the seven heavens, the 10 heavens, and also the three heavens, and how they are speaking about the same thing, but just in different definition.
Thank you. Real quick shout out to Fitz Gonzo, who donated via super chat and said, "Thank you for making the Bible story cool."
That's awesome.
And then thank you, Marie Brazier, who also donated. Thank you so much to both of you. I want to, and I'll move on to the next question from Tommy Anakin. How are our prayers answered? Like, how do they get answered?
Well, they go forth from us and go to the throne room of the Most High. some of them are carried by the angels, but also with regard to like the altar of the Levites and to the incense that people use. Some people, burn different incenses. Some people burn sage. That smoke is said to carry also to help our prayers reach the throne room of the Most High God as well. And so God, hears and receives our prayers on either the smoke or like the offerings where they have the burnt offerings. Those kind of things, they carry our prayers. And also that the guardian angels that are with us, that the prayers that we put forth throughout the day, that those things are related. All of our behaviors, all of our actions, all the things that we've done and did in the course of a day at twilight, the guardian angels carry forth all of those actions and all of those behaviors, those prayers, and they're recorded into the books of life. And so that's how those things are known. But God knows even before we have those thoughts and those prayers what we have as the secret desires of our heart. He is God. He knows all things. And so you just have to, go into your prayer closet, or just even in wherever you may be, just humble yourself before the Most High and just allow your thoughts and your prayers to go out to Him. And He knows. And so, that's how He knows and understands our prayers.
Thank you. It is 9:56 p.m. I think this is a good spot to take a quick break. And please stick around since we're going to be doing that book giveaway right after the break.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Sacred Word Revealed
comes to Atlanta, Georgia
on September 11th to the 13th, 2020.
Purpose to reveal end time mysteries.
To prepare the final generation,
we must don the full armor of God.
Featuring Zen Garcia,
Dr. Joy Pugh,
Rob Skiba,
Gary Wayne,
Yana Ben Noon,
Stephen Benoon,
Dr. Stephen Pigeon,
Zen Garcia,
Laurel Austin,
Nathan Reynolds. Buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
All right, it's time for the book giveaway. But real quick, Zen, can you please let us know what you decided to give away tonight? And I'll ask the question. And while we're waiting for the answer, we'll hear about why you chose that book tonight.
Okay, I think the Illuminati Secret Covenant and Protocols. And the reason being is because I've been reading a passage from, and I'll actually pull it up and I'll share it when we return from break, about how this economic crisis and all the looting and all that would take place and occurring on the streets of the entire world. And this is exactly what has come to pass. And so actually I'll read it right now. It's not very long at all.
Actually, Zen, can we ask the question?
Yeah,
and then while we
go
wait,
ahead.
we can
Sounds good.
listen to it. That'd be perfect. Okay, so the question for tonight, and if you would like to win the Illuminati Secret Covenant, yes. If you would like to win that book tonight, all you have to do is be the first person to answer this question in the live chat. So the question is, what was the common language in Judea during the time of the Messiah? I'll ask the question again. What was the common language in Judea during the time of the Messiah? First person to answer this question in chat will win the book for tonight. And Zen, if you'd like to go ahead and read that passage, that'd be great.
Yes, and this is something that I read last night, and people are asking, what this is, and I should have just said it then, but it says this hatred will be still further magnified by the effects of an economic crisis, which will stop dealing on the exchanges and bring industry to a standstill. We shall create by all the secret subterranean methods open to us, and with the aid of gold, which is all in our hands, a universal economic crisis whereby we shall throw upon the streets whole mobs of workers simultaneously in all the countries of the world. It says Europe, but I put world because this was written back in the 1800s. These mobs will rush delightfully to shed the blood of those whom, in the simplicity of their ignorance, they have envied from their cradles, and whose property they will then be able to loot. Ours they will not touch, because the moment of attack will be known to us, and we shall take measures to protect our own. And so you see how prophetic these words are. And again, it goes to what the Illuminati have declared in a very long time as method to accomplish world domination. And certainly the plan for whatever reason, for bringing the world to a standstill and putting all these mobs out on the street and creating all this looting and this huge, massive economic crisis and a shutdown of what the world had been used to, what was once normal. All this was written about hundreds of years in advance and is taking place right now, and has been over, the months since the murder and the death of George Floyd.
Thank you. So we do have a winner. And the winner for tonight is, drumroll please, it's Spring Rain. Congratulations, Spring Rain. The correct answer was Aramaic. So if you could please email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com with your address, and we'd be happy to send you the book. So congratulations again, Spring Rain. Thank you so much, everyone, for answering. And we'll move on to the rest of the live questions we have for tonight. So the next question we have is from Leo Key. Hey Zen, will you release the episodes of the 100,000 Giants War with Gary sometime soon? Seems like a good time with your new book on the way.
Yes, I will make certain to do that. I just haven't thought about it, and so, but yes, I'll release it somewhere and then give people the link very soon.
Awesome. Next question, also from Leo Key. Zen, how can we learn the meanings of the names being used in the Bible?
There is a book which Rob always alludes to, and I forget the name of it. And there's also a website that gives you the link for that. And I thought I had it saved. Let me see if I can find it in my bookmarks. But what I'll do is I'll find it and then we'll put it in the description so that people can have it. But there's a book and a website that gives
good.
you the ability to do that, to look up those names and those meanings.
Wow. I'm sorry.
I was just saying that, yeah, there is a website and a book that people can use to learn that information.
Awesome. All right. Next question from Tommy Anakin. I feel like we just covered this. How many times was the Earth destroyed? I think we just did that, right?
Yeah, we did. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So next question from Zach Lewis. When the Aramaic Targum was translated from Hebrew to Aramaic, why would they change the name of God?
They didn't initially. It was changed when they changed it into the Greek and to the English. But as far as from what I know, I mean, I don't see where that has been taken out, but and I don't see, as far as, but this, I really need to really look more. But I don't believe that, again, that this had happened at that time. But ask Justin if he has an opinion on this with regard to, because I don't know if they did remove it. And I think it was when they put it into the Greek and the English that these things were done. But I could be wrong. So.
Justin said that's a good question. But next question is from Kevin Unterberger.
Kevin.
Brother.
Hey, brother.
Oh, cool. Friends.
Yeah.
Brother Zen, is there a connection of the Native Americans to any of the 12 tribes?
Yes, without a doubt. And I think a lot of the indigenous peoples worldwide are part of the lost tribes. And the reason I can say this without question is that many of the native peoples, like there's a book that was written by Chief, his name is Joseph, I can't remember his last name right offhand, Riverwind, Joseph Riverwind. And he wrote a book called What the Old Ones Say. And he looks at and examines and brings forth how some of the things, as far as the native traditions, they are similar to the Hebrew traditions and rituals and songs even. And the names of God are all in Hebrew. And there's another book called The Man Called Ishi, which he was the last member of a particular native tribe. And they were trying to communicate with this particular individual, and they brought a linguist in to try speaking with him. And they discovered this linguist, being able to speak all these different languages, he was able to communicate with them in Hebrew. And that this native person, his tribe and his people, they spoke a form of Hebrew. And so how does that happen? unless they are one of the lost tribes. And so these kind of things, in my opinion, affirm without a doubt that, yes, there is a connection between the native peoples and the lost tribes.
Thank you. Next question is from The Blood Saves. Zen, my question is, how do we prove the first book of Adam is inspired, that it does not contradict?
Well, you can't prove that it's inspired, because even though, yes, there are prophecies that are contained within it, there are things that contradict, in my opinion, what is foundational biblical teachings. Like, for instance, that Cain and Abel were twins. In the first book of Adam and Eve, it says that they were twins, but that they were born with twin sisters and at different times. I believe that Cain was said to be 17 when Abel was 13, if I'm correct. But, again, even though, yes, there are things that are prophetic without a doubt, like, for instance, there's the prophecies of the rituals and the worship that Adam and Eve present to the Most High God, and how he tells them that as Adam shed his blood on the altar in some manner, that God would also come into the flesh and shed his blood in order to redeem us, and that Christ, the Word, tells Adam that he's going to come into the flesh 5,500 years after he's banished from paradise, and that this is affirmed in books like the Gospel of Nicodemus, another text called The Angel of Death, Abaddon, and other manuscripts from the primary Adamic literature, which I write about this in the Ancient Prophecies of Christ, my I forget what number book that was. Like, it's in the 20-somethings. But anyways, you can find all those prophecies affirmed there. And so, yes, there is inspiration, and there is prophecy, and there is fulfillment of it. But, again, nobody can say, because there's always going to be the detractors and those so-called experts and professionals that say that, oh, well, the first book of Adam and Eve was written in the 3rd century AD or whatever, when, in my opinion, without a doubt, these things were pre-flood, and that the testimonies and the testaments of many of the patriarchs and the prophets that were preserved through the ark and that were given to what I believe were the Magi, the children of Seth, as we see in the Revelation of the Magi, which is a 2nd century Syriac text, which speaks about how, the Magi were led to the Cave of Treasures where all this information had been preserved, and that given these manuscripts and this ancient knowledge, they were able to translate it into their own language and make it available to the world. And these kind of things are also affirmed in the Thracian Chronicles. In the book of Nave, it speaks about how Orpheus, that the teachings that were lost during the flood, that he was led on the search, the journey for what is the golden fleece by the word of the Lord. Dionysus, which means God Jesus or God Isis, and that he was without a doubt a follower of the Son of God, called the Lamb of God, and in this particular manuscript, and that he was taken to a place where these ancient remnants, and he was told to dig in this particular area. And this is going to be part of the pre-Adamic book that I'm releasing. It's going to be the very last chapter on, how some of these things were preserved and how we, are inheritors of what are the ancient testimonies and the ancient teachings, and how they even were preserved to come to us. And this is, in fact, going to be the first time that the book of Nave, any portion of it, will be put into print. that the Thracian church gave me permission to release portions of it. And this particular story found in this manuscript is one of those things which affirms how the legacy of Christianity predates that of, what is revealed in the Sumerian mythology, and how, a lot of people, historians and archaeologists, they teach that the Bible and Christianity was plagiarized from the pagan Sumerian traditions, which is absolutely incorrect. That the Thracian peoples preceded them by 2,000 years, and that these teachings spoken about and that they inherited themselves, which date back to the 5500 BC, and even older, according to archaeologists, but that these teachings were even older than that, and they were found in these sealed pots and clay pots and things of that nature, just like the Dead Sea Scrolls were preserved in manner, but that these preceded the flood of Noah's day. And so it's an incredible story, and these kind of things need to be known. So what was the question again, just to make sure I answered correctly?
Sure. Let's see. How do we prove the first book of Adam is inspired? That it does not contradict?
Right. And so, there's always going to be those that detract and that say that these teachings came after Christ or whatever. But in my opinion, the legacy of Christianity and the legacy of the testimonies and the testaments and various things of that nature, they are without a doubt pre-flood and of the ancient times, going back to Adam and Eve. And so I do believe that the first book of Adam and Eve is a narrative which was written by Adam and Eve and given to Seth and passed on to the other generations. And that if they, the so-called experts date it to the 3rd century BC, that this would just be a newer translation of what is a very ancient and old story.
Thank you. Next question is from MJM. Is there a mention in the Bible of both Og and Sihon as being alive both before and after the flood? If not, where is this mentioned?
Well, with regard to Og of Bashan, he is spoken about as being the last remnant giant, and that he was alive before the flood of Noah's day. But Sihon is his brother, and so if Sihon is his brother, and Og supposedly is the only giant to have survived, well, there would be no other giants to give birth to Sihon. And so Sihon had to have was alive before the flood of Noah's day, in similar manner as Og. And so, it's common sense. And you can find this in the wars at the very end of Numbers and Deuteronomy, where the Israelites enter into the promised land. Because Sihon was one of those that came out against, with the Amalekites and against Moshe and the Israelites when they went into the land of Canaan.
Thank you. Next question is from Fabiola Austin. What is the most trustworthy version of the Enoch?
First Enoch. I would say that
of Enoch,
I would say the Aramaic versions that we do not have access to, that were found with the Dead Sea Scrolls, but that were sold on the private market to the highest bidder. Those would probably be the most ancient versions of the Book of Enoch that we as public should have access to. The ones that we do are from the Ethiopic, from the Ge'ez, and they're preserved in the Ethiopic canon. And even these were mostly expunged from public consideration, but a guy named James Bruce, traveling in Ethiopia, was able to secure 3 translations, and taking them back to the UK, had passed them on to the Vatican and as well to France, to the Louvre, I believe, and then published and interpreted his own version and released it to the world. And so the public has, since that time, the 18th century, come to know about the Book of Enoch once more. But that Satan and the seed of the serpent had almost completely eradicated this knowledge from public consideration. But God, made a way and preserved it. And so we have what is, the Ethiopic version of the Book of Enoch.
Awesome. And we do have the collected works of Enoch, the prophet, at sacredwordpublishing.com as well, which is a collection of all of the different versions, right, Zen?
Yes. Not only does it have the first 3 books of Enoch, which are the ones that are recognized, but it has a lot of other manuscripts, including excerpts, for instance, like the Book of Jasher that speaks on the life of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scroll fragments, the Book of the Giants, and also like the Midrash of Semyaza and Azazel, the Kebra Nagas, chapter 100, which we read about the Genesis 6 and all that, and other manuscripts which have only recently come to light. A Greek manuscript discovered in 2006, and others, Syriac and Armenian, and so there's a number of manuscripts which are attributed to Enoch that nobody has read or heard about before that are also included with this particular manuscript, which we've released, so people can check it out. You can just go to our website and you'll find the contents, a page of the contents, and if you look through that, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yes, at sacredwordpublishing.com. Next question is from Electric Pyramid. I would like to ask Zen if he feels that we are in a demiurge, and the point of Yeshua Messiah is to pull us out of this fallen simulation. Zen, you have been a blessing and confirming witness.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, we are now living in a matrix of control. And we are coming into, but with regard to the simulation is called life and embodiment into what is this visible world. This third dimensional reality where learning through the knowledge of good and evil, here is the union, the meeting place of both spirit and matter, good and evil, light and darkness, pain and pleasure, that everything is unified here on the earth, and that the influence of the devils and demons and legion waging war for the souls of humanity against the children of light and the sons of light and the angels of light, all that is going on around us. This is a spiritual war. As Paul said, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places. And so, without a doubt, that is the truth of the matter.
Thank you. Next question is from Guitar Dreams. Can demons give us dreams more, or only Yahweh, Yeshua, Holy Spirit, and holy angels? Thanks.
Well, yes, it is my opinion that only God can give us dreams that specifically being prophetic or that are meaningful. However, without a doubt, the devils and the demons and Satan, especially in the Kebra Nagas, it speaks about how he is able to germinate, thoughts in our minds and to influence us in evil, and that the shepherd of Hermas, which was part of the original 80-book King James Version of the Bible. In mandate number 6, it speaks about how there are two angels with us, the good and the bad, the angel of righteousness, the angel of unrighteousness, and how they are both placing thoughts and influencing us to act in ways that are both good and evil. And depending on which we choose to feed with our free will and with our actions, our behaviors, and our intent, that's what, takes over and gains control of us. And that if we feed the angel of unrighteousness, well, then certainly we are walking the broad path of destruction. But if we follow the narrow way and we listen to the angel of righteousness, the Holy Spirit and the consciousness which is in within all of us, we know when we are doing evil. We know when we're doing good, and when we are following the influence or one or the other. And so, without a doubt, these things are true.
Thank you. Next question is from, Facts Not Fiction. Can you tell us where the books of knowledge given to Adam are mentioned in the Bible? If not, where were they mentioned, and is the same knowledge as the pillars of Lamech, I mean?
No, they're not. And these books are not mentioned in the Bible. However, they are mentioned in the ancient rabbinical commentary. The Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, was said to have been given to Adam, and that this particular manuscript describes within it how it is that the word of the Lord, Yeshua the Christ, the Savior Messiah, using the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph Bet, was able to sing the creation into being and to manifest it, and that through wisdom ordered the universe. And so, there's that, the Sefer Yetzirah, which Sefer just means book, and Yetzirah, the book of creation. And there's also in the Assatar, the book of the secrets of Moses, which not a lot of people have heard about, but there is a mention, and I have released and published this, that there are several passages in that particular manuscript that speaks about the books of creation being given to Adam before he was exiled from paradise, and that it was these books that he passed on to his generations and that he taught them from. And these were the books of the wars of the Lord, the book of astrology, the book of signs, the book of the generations of man, and the book of the law. And so these 5 books are those things that were passed on to Adam. And it's interesting that you see in the first book of Enoch that there are portions of the testimony of Enoch which connect to each one of these particular manuscripts in different ways. And so, like Enoch's dream visions connects to the book of the generations of man, the book of astrology and the book of the signs, on the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries. And then you have, prophetically spoken about in the mid 40s and through chapter 60s, the judgment and the harvest and the coming of the Son of Man, and how Christ is the Redeemer and also Judge. And so these kind of things are revealed, in my opinion, and confirmed even by the account of Enoch, as well as the other testaments, that, like the testament of the 12 patriarchs, where these things are also mentioned within them as well.
Thank you. Next question is from Alaska Woods. Is Hades inside the earth?
It is, yes. Sheol, the bottomless pit, the sides of the north, what is called the Gehenna, the abysmal chasm. All of those are what is, again, alluded to as this whirlpool, this hollow earth entrance into the interior of the earth. And that, all throughout the traditions of Christianity, we are taught that hell is beneath us and heaven is above us. Well, this is absolutely correct. Heaven is above the vaulted dome of the earth, in the third paradise, which is, again, near the heavenly temple and the throne room of the Most High God. And that Sheol, we see this even in the Isaiah 14, the declaration of Satan, where he said, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will ascend to the heavens above the stars and the clouds of God and the sides of the north, above the mount of the congregation. I will be like the Most High. And then God says to him, no, where you thought you were going to ascend, I'm going to cast you down to the sides of the pit. And so his domain is not in the heavens. He lost that war. He was cast down and cast out. And so now his domain and that of Legion is within the interior of the earth, in what is called Hades, Sheol, Gehenna, Tartarus, things of that nature.
Thank you. Next question is from Greg Johnson. Are the original 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati direct descendants of Cain's serpent seed? If so, how did they survive the flood?
Well, I answered this question earlier in the show, and again, it was through Ham. And that Noah was instructed to take Nama as wife in order to perpetuate the serpent seed through the flood. And that Ham, seeing the nakedness of his father, having sex with his mother, brought forth the child Canaan. And that Canaan, cursed by Noah to be a servant in the tents of Shem and under the priesthood, that there was a prophecy there of how the children of Cain, that they would, during the time of Joshua, act like they were from a faraway place, and then being spared by Joshua and the princes, they were made to be the hewers and the servants and the scribes unto the Levite priesthood, and that they then usurped the priesthood, and they became the Pharisees that conspired the murder of Christ. And that's why he said of them, ye are of your father the devil. He was a murderer from the beginning. And he said of their fathers that they were the assassins of the prophets, from Abel to Zacharias. And so, again, these things are affirmed without a doubt. You can find all of this information in my 12th book, The Great Contest 2, The Enmity Between the Seed Lines.
Thank you. Next question. And by the way, all these books that Zen mentioned, you can find on sacredwordpublishing.com. I do often get the question still, like, where can I get that book? So I just want to make sure to put, and you can get 20% off this month with promo code Hydrate20, all caps, Hydrate20. But with that, we'll move on to the next question. From the Blood Saves. If God makes us drink from the cup of forgetfulness before the 1,000 years of peace, how does that make us more wiser, being in the kingdom, not remembering our past? If we learn from our mistakes, how does drinking from the cup of forgetfulness help us?
It doesn't. But, again, it's not before the millennial reign that we drink. It's before we enter into flesh embodiment. That when you leave what is your first estate and come in as a pre-existent son of God, and you enter into flesh form, you enter in as a child with tabula rasa, meaning clean slate. And so we are not here to be wise initially right off the bat, but it's through the knowledge of good and evil and our experience of pain and pleasure, light and darkness, that makes us wise. And that we, in that manner, come to be like the angels of God, which, the fallen angels being cast down and cast out, they experience and are learning through, and are under the authority of death in similar manner as us. And so they too, learning through good and evil, we are becoming like them. But we, fortunately, having our Messiah, are able to be redeemed and be able to restore back to our first estate and back to salvation and eternity through him. Whereas the fallen angels, they gave up that blessing when they chose to be and still fight under the pretense of a legion and waging war against Adam's seed and having murdered his generations from the time of Abel on. I would just mention that if you want to know more about pre-existence, election, and predestination and all that, I recommend my 7th book, Skyfall, The Angels of Destiny. That whole book is about this particular issue.
Thank you. Next question from Sent Sword. Zen, do you think Enoch and Noah lived at the same time? Some people say the book of Enoch alludes to this.
This is something that both Rob and I had come across, and we were talking about how it says that Enoch had been translated when he was 365 years old. But then there's a mention in a particular portion of the text where he was 500 years old, and that Lamech, or one of the sons, had gone to him for advice. And so we were talking about how in the book of Jasher it says that he separated himself and went to a place where he was closer to God and distant from man, but still accessible, and that his children knew where he was. And so it's a possibility. But, again, out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses shall the truth be established. And there's no concluding evidence one way or the other than, it says that Enoch walked with God. Does that mean that he was, at that time physically taken? Some of the stories say that. Others, that it could have been, that he maybe remained here until the time of Noah. And certainly the manuscripts speak about how it would be, and even the writings of Abraham talk about how Enoch and even his entire city was raptured to the heavens before the flood of Noah's day, and that the righteous up to Methuselah, that Methuselah means his death shall bring. And it was when he died that the flood came upon the world. It was 7 days after he passed away. And so, there is a possibility that Enoch could have been here in some capacity, at least, at the time when Noah was yet alive. But, who, again, really knows?
Thank you. Next question is from The Blood Saves. What are the books you disregard?
Well, the Talmud, the Zohar, the Kabbalah, things that are, that are contrary and that are antichrist, in my opinion. There are other manuscripts that are a little bit weird to me, like the Gospel of the Secret Supper. There are other, like the Quran. I believe that it is corrupted as well. Even though there are underlying truths that are, accurate, but still, even like all the manuscripts, like the Sumerian mythos, that teaches a heliocentric worldview and teaches about the Anunnaki and how they tried to create a slave race of humanity, which is absolutely true. But you have to be careful because, they are corrupted as well. They teach that the world that the sun is the center of our solar system, and that the Earth is one of 9 planets, which we know all those things to be false. And so there's aspects of the Nag Hammadi codices which I'm not fully on board with, and I do think that there are interesting aspects, and that the story that is revealed, and that there is underlying truths like the Holy Spirit being feminine as portrayed in those manuscripts, in similarity to as we see in Proverbs. But again, there are other things that are, in my opinion, contradictions, especially the whole teaching, even though this is not found in the codices, but people teach that the demiurge is Yahweh, Yahuwah of the Old Testament, and that's absolutely false. That's a contrivance. In fact, the Nag Hammadi codices actually say that the name of the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, which means child passed through here, is actually a reference to Samael, who's also called Saklas, the blind fool. And we know that Samael is the name of the serpent in the Targum in Genesis 3:6. And that Samael means the angel of death, the viper of the poison of God. And so, anything, my foundational truth is the Bible and the Targum, which I know without a doubt are inspired. And then the things that confirm and affirm the truth that I stand on with regard to those manuscripts, out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses, the truth being established, that's where I hold my faith. And those things that are contradictory or that are, not in line with what I find revealed within the scriptures, even though my opinion, most people don't understand even the canonical materials, much less the extra-biblical. But I think that if you dedicate yourself to researching, studying, and reading them, that without a doubt the Holy Spirit will give you discernment, and you will know what is truth and what isn't. And I believe that the Holy Spirit has led me in discernment to share what has been revealed to me as revelation. And it, is my opinions and my perspective are very much in contradiction to majority opinion, but I do believe, and I confirm and back up scripturally with many different ancient sources why it is I believe the way that I do, and why it is I teach the way that I teach. And again, anybody can read and study and be led in similar discernment, in my opinion. Truth is truth, and anybody can learn it if you just dedicate yourself to it.
Thank you. Next question is from Fabiola Austin. What is inside the Islamic Kaaba in Mecca?
It is a black stone that was said to be part of some asteroid that had fallen from the heavens and come here to the earth, in similarity to the fallen angels. And perhaps maybe it is, something that was cast out with them. I don't really know, but it is a black rock, and somebody that is probably familiar with, the Islamic religion and their beliefs and their worship will probably be able to tell you better than I can.
Thank you. Next question is from Spring Rain. Other than Jasher, Enoch, and the War of the Lord, are there any other lost books mentioned in the Septuagint or KJV?
Yeah, there's 23 manuscripts that are mentioned in the Bible that are not found in the scriptures and that we do not have access to. One of those is Gad, the story of Gad the seer. There's others like Ido. There's the Wars of the Kings, books 1 and 2. There's many manuscripts that are mentioned that we do not have access to. And so, the book of Nathan the prophet, things of that nature. The book of the Wars of the Lord. which was a trilogy, and we don't have access to those. And so there's lots of manuscripts which even mentioned in the Bible that we don't have access to, but then there are, many others in other manuscripts that are mentioned as well that we don't have access to, like in the Qumran Bible and the Nag Hammadi Codices. There's numerous manuscripts mentioned there that we don't have access to.
Thank you. Next question is from Neely. Do you believe that the pyramids all over the world were built by the fallen angels? If yes, do you think that these structures are actually a copy of heavenly buildings?
Yes, I do believe that the temples and the pyramidal complexes and the megalithic structures and the cyclopean architecture that we see worldwide are things that were done before that are pre-Adamic and pre-man, and that they were done by the fallen angels and giants of old. And they reflect, in my opinion, that New Jerusalem, the city of God, is a pyramid, in my opinion. And that's why we see them counterfeiting and reflecting in, bringing down as above, so below, that they are trying to show what they had seen in the heavens before their fall and banishment here, exile here to the earth.
Thank you. We actually just finished up all of our live questions for tonight. However, in episode 42, there was a ton of leftover questions, so I'm going to go over a couple of those. So one question is from Epiphany of Veritas. Zen, how widespread would you estimate the actual practice of Satanism as an all-out death cult with specific rituals presently on this earth?
Equally as large as probably Christianity. And I know that sounds utterly preposterous and astounding to say, but in my opinion, even certain aspects of Christianity are idolatrous, in that the people, the congregations that believe they're involved in Christianity are actually involved in forms of paganism. And that many of the ancient religions, the worship of the ancient gods, which so many people are embracing now, believing that, the teachings like the Sumerian teachings are older than that of Christianity, and they are embracing what is this New Age philosophy that is coming forth. And they're worshiping these ancient gods, these pantheon of gods and goddesses, and they're calling upon their names, not understanding that these were the fallen angels, that they were the fallen ones, and that they are not gods, but actual, angels, and they are created beings. So, they are not gods. They can't imbue life. They can't manifest from nothing, as only God can do. And so, and then we see that especially amongst the elites, the royals, and that, the high levels of Roman Catholic, the Jesuits and things of that nature, the Black Pope, that they are without a doubt involved in this cannibalism and drinking of blood, and that these kind of things are practiced in more and by a lot of people that we don't realize and we don't understand, and we don't see it, but it is without a doubt in existence. And that even Ezekiel, was shown how they were doing these rituals and worshiping the sun even in ancient times, and that in Malachi it speaks about how they were involved in even chopping up bodies for the pot, and that they were involved in cannibalism. Micah chapter 3 is what I'm speaking about, verses 1 through 5, I believe. But anyways, yeah, these kind of things are ongoing and being perpetuated by more people than we realize.
Thank you. Next question. This one's live from Juliet Mary. How many demons are there now? More than the human population today?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I don't really know. But there are a lot. Definitely a lot. There are, as far as the countries of the world, they're said to be divided 72, and that there's one particular entity over all of these, and that Michael and God having chosen the Israelites for himself, but the rest are led by Legion. And then there are numerous principalities, powers, judges, thrones, things of that nature that are underneath them. How much, I have no idea, but there are many, many demons. I would even say that the number is equivalent to that of the size of humanity. And the reason I say this is because in the scriptures, in the Chronicles of Jeremiah, in the Book of Jubilees, or maybe not the Book of Jubilees, but in the Chronicles of Jeremiah, without a doubt, it speaks about how the number of the angels of God and also Legion equate to a number that of the children of humanity and those that would be born into flesh, and that when this number is accomplished, that then the end will come.
Thank you. I'm going to make sure that we don't have a live question, and I can move on. Okay. Fabiola Austin asks, some pyramids were found in the Amazons in South America. Any literature you may recommend reading about the topic?
As far as the pyramids in the Amazon, there's an individual called Michael Niven, Niven. And this individual did a number of dig sites, and he was an archaeologist back in the 18th century, I believe, and he was able to pull up very deep levels of these dig sites and go into these different temples, sites, and complexes. And what he discovered is that the further down you go, the more ancient the culture, the higher the technology, and the greater the capacity, and the more intriguing the culture and the civilization. So this guy, William Niven, is an individual to check out with regard to the ancient structures of Mexico and South America and things of that nature.
Thank you. Next question from live chat is from Karina Cumming. In the Targum, the sections that say Jerusalem, what is that?
That's the Jerusalem Targum. It's overlaid, and it's an alternative viewpoint. There was both the Palestinian and the Aramaic, and so those two are overlaid one on top of the other. And when there is an alternative translation, it will say Jerusalem, and then it will give that alternative interpretation of that particular passage. Also, I want to make one other thing with regard to the previous question, that there's an individual named James Churchward who does a lot of work on the ancient culture of Mu. And this was a mother culture, an Atlantean culture that he shares and brings forth a lot of information connecting to this ancient people as well. And so check out his work as well.
Awesome. A question that just came in from Wendy Badawi. The first temple in the Testament of Solomon and even in the Quran state it was built by demons. So this seems to also confirm the building of the pyramids and the ark.
Yes, I do absolutely believe so. And that we see that, God gives Solomon authority over the fallen ones and even the over Legion, and that he's able to utilize them to build the temple of God. And that's why it's said to have been built with no iron tools, and that it was fashioned supernaturally. And that, in my opinion, affirms in similar manner that, a lot of these ancient structures and antediluvian cyclopean architecture in similarity was also created and established by the fallen ones.
Thank you. Let's see. I think I might have had one. It's actually already 10:55.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think it's a good time to close out. I just want to thank everyone for sending in your questions. Zen, you answered 38 questions tonight. So
did we break a record?
I actually can't remember. If anyone can remember our actual record, that would be really cool. But
I think it's 30.
Oh, Justin said 37.
Did break. Okay.
Okay, yes. Praise Yah. That's awesome. You're going through these super fast, so that's awesome to be able to answer as many people's questions as possible. And I think it's really fun to have all this time at the end to answer live questions as they come in, and that's just fun. But with that, Zen, if you could please close us out in prayer, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Father God, we, as always, just humble ourselves before you in thanksgiving for all life and being, for chance and opportunity to wake up to new day and to embrace just the beauty of the creation and the great mystery before us, and to be able to serve the kingdom in the capacity that you have led each one of us to in role and mission, and that we all have greater purpose here, Lord. And so in our efforts, we're trying to bring people to remembrance of that, and that in embracing who you are, why you're here, and what all of this is all about, that you also will choose to prioritize the kingdom and to be the watchman, the watchwoman, the holder of the secrets, the keeper of the knowledge, so that you can guide and lead the upcoming generations and those that are going to be seeking answer to all the strangeness of what we are contending with as world, that you'll be able to help them and aid them and help them to understand that they are loved and that God died for them in order that they should be redeemed unto salvation, and that through the promise of the cross, we have access to eternity. And so that is the first and the foremost and the most important thing for people to understand. In the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Zen. And if you have a question for a future episode, please do email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com with subject line questions for Zen or Zen AMA. We're so grateful for your love. We're so grateful for your prayers. And we hope to see you next time. Shalom and good night.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.